Okay, welcome back. This is going to be the final lecture of the semester. I wanted to thank you all for being in this class. I know it was difficult, especially for some of you who don't do all writing. So it's a very writing intensive class. I really tried to help you guys with your writing and with your grammar and also with the philosophy. And so I really hope you enjoyed the class. And please, please, please either email me or on the like the judge your professor form or whatever, you know, put on the criticisms, like the realistic criticism that you had about the class, along with the good stuff, of course, but like if there's something I could have done better, let me know because I'm always trying to improve my courses. And this is one of the very few times I've taught this course because we usually don't have enough students. So I'm really proud of you guys. So thank you for everything. I really hope you enjoy it. I hope you stuck with it. I hope you liked the lectures. I know they're kind of boring. It's just me talking, but I do my best to put it together and tie it all to the former literature, and even to my other courses, and even to real life, like everyday stuff. So um, I hope you liked it. I hope you'll sign up for my future courses. I'm teaching at least 5 in the fall, so love to have you. So anyway, let's jump in. Okay. Chapter 11b is called Totalitarian Organization, and here is where Arendt talks about how sort of the state is organized. She'll even make the argument like you can't say state and you can't say bureaucracy because it's all about the leader. And so, like, I want to put that forward first, but I still need to be able to use these sort of terms like the state or the bureaucracy or the administration or whatever to sort of tie it into contemporary politics and um, everyday political language. Okay, with that disclaimer, let's go. Okay, so unlike propaganda and terrorism, which are sort of, yes, two sides of the same coin, basically, but also distinctly separate, she says that organization and propaganda go hand in hand, basically. And that these totalitarian systems have a few things that make them all um, the same, basically. Some some actions, some consequences, some administrative, whatever it is. There's like 9 things that she points out that we're going to go through that are sort of indicative of a totalitarian organization. Number 1, the front organizations. Arendt says the most strikingly new organizational device of the movements in their pre-power stage is the creation of these front organizations, right? The distinction drawn between being an actual party member and a sympathizer with sort of the movement, the ideology, whatever it is. Okay. Appointment by the leader and only the leader is the most important thing, right? Not merit, and especially not democracy once the totalitarian system has gained some semblance of power, right? And again, Arendt pointed on that earlier, like um, you need non-structured citizens, basically, who are outside the political realm, um, and you also need you can have democracy to begin with, but never to end with, basically. And you need them to be very ambiguous about what kind of political system they want, right? Okay. Um, and so some examples of this are one, the Friends of the Soviet Union, many sort of Bolshevik and Leninist organizations that weren't directly tied to the party, but were still part of the sort of party apparatus and the spreading of information and this sort of thing. You could also think of the SA or the SS or the brown shirts um, in, geez, in Nazi Germany. And most of the time, these are not actual party members. So if you look at even contemporary China, Russia, the USSR prior, Nazi Germany, etc., um, while they are sort of sympathizers and even like clamor to become party members, especially if you look at a place like China, it's very, very select, right? It's very, very select who is an actual member. You have 1.3 billion Chinese and like, I don't know, 8 to 10,000, 12,000 functionaries of the Communist Party the numbers aren't exactly clear, right? They're a little bit ambiguous. Um, but yeah, so you want a very, very tightly controlled party, um, but these sort of functioning front organizations. So why this way, right? And Arendt says first, the ingeniousness of this device during the movement's struggle for power is that the front org not only isolate the members, but also offer them a semblance of outside normalcy, which wards off the impact of the true reality more effectively than mere indoctrination. So, sort of feeling like you're a member of the group sort of allows you to brush off the more worrisome concerns, right? Um, And I would point to this, like China uses what they term as neighborhood organizations, right? You can go and learn all these wonderful like communal things, and you can do projects for the kids, and you can talk to sometimes like a doctor, and you can even win like awards, like crap awards, but like little toys and stuff. Like if you're the best community member for the week or the month or whatever. But they're also hard line communist propaganda outlets, and they're in like every single neighborhood, right? So, yeah, that sort of gives you an idea of what we're talking about here. And the USSR used to like labor orgs until eventually that became a problem. They sort of purged them. The Nazis used many. There's actually a really famous article by this woman named Berman, who wrote about how these disorganized groups, groups like bird watchers, right, became so involved, or bowling leagues, or whatever it was, became so involved in Nazist propaganda partly because they weren't involved in anything else, right? So really interesting paper. If anybody's interested, let me know. I'll send you the paper for free. Um, so, my question for this lecture, and probably the question for the final paper, is going to be: does either party, without being propagandist or extremist or whatever it is, does either party in the United States have what sort of resembles this, right? These front organizations that could often just be pushing politics, right? Okay. Another one, the final point of the front organizations is radicalization of the ranks. Um, and Arendt says, in the pre-power stage of the movement, total espionage is not yet possible, right? But the fluctuating hierarchy, similar to that of secret services, makes it possible, even without actual power, to degrade any rank or group that wavers or shows signs of decreasing radicalism by the mere insertion of new, more radical layers, hence driving the older group automatically in the direction of the front org and away from the center of the movement. So, get rid of the centrists, push them out, put in the more extremists. This is really interesting, depending on whether you're urban or not. Remember, in the last paper, in Fanon's paper, we talked about, the urban political parties, even of the quote unquote natives, of the black indigenous. Um, these these parties were often sort of tied into the system, and then they would kick out their more radical leaders, and those would radicalize the countryside, right? And so this is almost the exact opposite, right? Where the sort of disdainful or skeptical or whatever leadership gets replaced with extreme leadership to push it forward. So yeah, that was my discussion from Fanon. Um, okay, number two. Uh, yeah, number two of sort of the radicalization ideas, or the organization of a totalitarian regime, is that you need duplicate administrative functions. So, as an alternative to the actual state bureaucracy, remember the last lecture we talked about how these totalitarian leaders tried to degrade the idea of the sort of independent institutions that exist in a society. So, as an alternative to the state, the totalitarian organization has to set up an alternative for basically everything, right? So that someone can feel like they're part of the movement without it being political. So you need a new Social Security administration just provided by Nazis. You need a new education administration just provided by Nazis. You need a new healthcare system just provided by Nazis, right? And this is one of the traps of groups like Hamas. And, I'm not at all going to get into the Israel thing, but Hamas has similar organizational structures where, and ideological structures where, you know, they not only serve the function of defense and or offense from sort of a war perspective or even like a border perspective or however you want to perceive it. I don't want to get into the politics of it, but they do, and they have learned to provide social services, to provide an alternative to a functioning state. And so you see this in the West Bank. Arguably they're supposed to be legitimate, they're not. You see this with Hamas, you see this with Hezbollah, you see this with other sort of, are they freedom fighters? Are they terrorists across Eastern Asia? You often saw this with the drug lords, right, in South America, where they would buy off police and they would provide their own functioning communities and their own functioning social services. And so this is something that happens, right? They completely duplicate the administrative functions because they have delegitimized the former functions and institutions and try to convince you to be a part of this new society. Okay, number 3, explicit terror cells. Arendt says, quote, in this respect, the function of the elite formations is the very opposite of that of the front orgs. While the latter, the front orgs, lend the movement an air of respectability and inspire confidence, the former, or the terror cells basically, by extending complicity, make every party member aware that he has left for good the normal world which outlaws murder and that he will be held accountable for all crimes committed by the elite. If you fight back against the party, you could well be murdered. Right? Okay, number 4, artificial creation of civil war conditions. So we talked a little bit about this, right? This disjointed, completely malaised society, and often it turns into this anger against each other. And Fanon even discusses this sort of from a Marxist perspective, right? When he starts discussing the conditions of sort of internecine violence that occur before the violence against the colonialists. Okay, part 5, absolute authority. And this one's pretty clear, but Arendt says when a totalitarian movement has been built up, has established the principle that the will of the Führer is the party's law, then, and when its whole hierarchy has been efficiently trained for a single purpose, swiftly to communicate the will of the leader to all ranks. So basically, like every level of the organization exists to be the mouthpiece of the Führer or the Soviet leader or the Politburo or whatever it is. And so this is a sort of a Hobbes versus Rousseau argument here, right? Totalitarianism has to be seen in a Hobbesian perspective. Like they cannot escape it. They must be above the law because they must be the law and the only law that exists, which is why much of their policy is ambiguous because it can't be proven to be wrong when they can change direction. So very, very Hobbesian argument here. Okay, number 6, the leader takes on all responsibility for all party members, basically, for the nation and the people, but all crimes committed in the name of the leader. And this also means, sort of inherently and quietly, Arendt points out, that it means the liquidation of anyone who questions him and his subordinates acting in his name, right? So even when you question the brown shirts who are just going around beating people up or killing people, you can be killed because they represent the will of the Führer, right? Scary. Number 7, they sort of build this structure of secret societies out in the open. I'll let you read more about that. Number 8, a fragmented society. We talked a little bit about this. So, quote, From the viewpoint of an org which functions according to the principle that whoever is not included is excluded, whoever is not with me is against me, the world at large loses all the nuance, differentiation, and pluralistic aspects which had in any event become confusing and unbearable to the masses, who had lost their place and their orientation in it. So more of this on we. And quote, one of the claims inherent in totalitarianism organizations is that everything outside the movement is dying, right? A claim which is drastically realized under the murderous conditions of totalitarian rule, but which even in the pre-power stage appears plausible to the masses who escape from disintegration and disorientation into the fictitious home of the movement, right? So this is the, like, oh, we have to go back to the way when it was better. This sort of, this fictitious idea that the modern world is dying, that everything in the existing and future society is decaying and decadent. Anyway, and the final one is number 9, and I just sort of entitled this an element of absurdism or surrealism. Quote, mass propaganda discovered that its audience was ready at all times to believe the worst, no matter how absurd, and did not particularly object to being deceived because it held every statement to be a lie anyhow. Quote, the totalitarian mass leaders based their propaganda on the correct psychological assumption that under such conditions one could make people believe the most fantastic statements one day and trust that if the next day they were given irrefutable proof of their falsehood, they would take refuge in cynicism. Instead of deserting leaders who had lied to them, they would protest that they had all known all along that the statement was a lie and would admire the leaders for their superior tactical cleverness. Man, that's cynical. So I will end it there. Truly hope you enjoyed the class. I wish I could have expanded the readings, honestly, but this is a summer course, so I tried to really cut it down to a manageable amount, about 100 pages a week, 120 pages a week, or per unit, excuse me. I tried to clip my lectures down, so I hope that helped. Some people say they want them all lumped into one, but I don't really get that response from a whole lot. So anyway, thank you for being here. One last note, please don't think that I support totalitarianism or political violence or the Hobbesian perspective. We just need to talk about these things because they can be prevalent in our societies. So thank you so much for being here. I really hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you soon.